In every sport, there are players who people just love to hate, but there is arguably no athlete more hated than the NBA's James Harden. Not only is he notorious for being one of the biggest ball hogs in the association, but he's also a renowned flopper and noted whiner, having complained about his tenure in Houston and wanting out, as well as his short-lived time in Brooklyn. Now he's playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, and believe it or not, people still hate him. But what does the rest of the NBA think of the beard? Keep watching to learn more about why NBA players hate James Harden. Kevin Durant. The first player that has made it pretty obvious how much he hates James Harden is his former Brooklyn and OKC teammate, Kevin Durant. A new report recently shed light on how the Nets, led by Kevin Durant, had issues with Harden's effort level, conditioning, accountability, and attitude, and Harden too grew frustrated with the team. But it all became obvious when Harden officially requested a trade and was in and out of the Nets lineup with an injured hamstring, even showing up late for their February 8th game and leaving Brooklyn for Houston on another night of clubbing, demonstrating his lack of interest and commitment to the Nets, to which a source for Bleacher Report said that Kevin was like, "Fuck it, James isn't bringing shit." Durant then reportedly signed off on the trade to send Harden to Philly and felt that there was no need repairing the relationship. Another source referred to the Durant-Harden feud as a Cold War that made everyone miserable, something that began in the prior offseason and only got worse as the regular season progressed. After the trade went down, Durant was asked about the situation and said this about Harden.
I'm excited for our team. Looking forward to finishing the season out with these new groups and these new players. And, you know, it's playoffs right around the corner, so we got to fast track into, you know, getting used to each other. But I'm excited. You know, I think everybody got what they wanted.
You don't have to be a psychic to understand what Durant meant when he said that everybody got what they wanted. Because obviously Durant and the Nets wanted Harden the heck out of Brooklyn. In fact, later that evening, Kevin was chosen as the captain for the All-Star game and was forced to draft his respective teammates for the big game. As you might be able to imagine, he made a pretty interesting selection, not named James Harden, much to LeBron's amusement. Kyrie Irving. When James Harden first got traded to Brooklyn from Houston, fans were eager to see the backcourt of Kyrie Irving and James Harden flourish and dominate the league. Unfortunately, that dream never became a reality, and the two were constantly at odds with each other. Since Kyrie Irving is a professional who rarely speaks negatively towards others, he had nothing but nice things to say about James Harden following the trade.
Now that's official, I think we can say our piece to James and wish him well. And, you know, ultimately for me, I just want everybody to be happy.
Despite Kyrie Irving neglecting to throw any shade at Harden or state his dismay with the former MVP, reports have surfaced that the two weren't exactly fans of one another. Apparently, Harden wasn't too thrilled that Irving was missing games due to his vaccination status, and Kyrie felt pretty mutual about the situation, with multiple reports coming out that the two even had beef a couple of times in the facility, as Kyrie would constantly call Harden washed up after locking him down in practice, which would lead to frustration for both parties. In fact, Joe Harden of The Athletic reported that Kyrie once lit some sage, which is a Native American ritual that Irving has embraced to cleanse negative energy before a game in Cleveland in mid-January. At which point, Harden, who was seated in front of his locker at the time, watching Irving and looked up at Kyrie as if he had three heads. Another source noted how there was definitely a weird vibe between them. You could tell Harden was annoyed and Kyrie wasn't feeling James. Obviously, the odds that either of these players will come out publicly and speak poorly towards the other is pretty slim, but it's become fairly well known that they did not get along in Brooklyn. Giannis Antetokounmpo. The beef between the Greek Freak and the Beard has been ongoing for the past few years, but is believed to have initially began in the 2019 regular season. In fact, during a January matchup between the Bucks and Rockets, Giannis hit Harden in the head with a rocket of a pass that knocked him over. Even though most assumed that it was unintentional, it's hard to say with what their relationship has evolved into. At the end of the 2019 season, Giannis narrowly beat out Harden in MVP voting, with not just the Houston Rockets social media voicing their displeasure with the decision, but James as well, who stated the following about Giannis after he won the award.
Once the media, they create a narrative about somebody from the beginning of the year, I think they just take that narrative and then run with it the entire year. Like,
yeah,
you know, I don't even want to get into the details, but
yeah,
all I can do is control what I can do. And I went out there and did what I was supposed to do at a high level.
But things really started to heat up the following year when Giannis was named as a captain of the NBA All-Star Game and was asked to draft his roster ahead of the big game.
I'm between Kemba and Trae Young.
Wait, you don't want the dribbler?
I want somebody that's gonna pass the ball. That's what I want. So I'm gonna go with crossover killer, step back master, Kemba Walker.
Following the All-Star Game, James Harden was asked to address the comments Giannis made during the All-Star draft and made the following statement.
I average more assists than him, I think.
You ranked 10th in assists going into the All-Star break, and Kemba ranked 36th in assists going into the All-Star break.
So I don't see what the joke is, you know, but I wish I could just run and with 7 feet and run and just dunk. Like, that takes no skill at all. I gotta actually learn how to play basketball and how to have skill, you know?
Giannis and Harden have gone back and forth since, and while most of it is probably just for show, I think it's pretty safe to assume that these two are not overly fond of one another. Charles Barkley. While maybe not currently in the NBA, Charles Barkley is still one of the most recognizable faces in the sport, and his utter hatred towards James is well established. On numerous occasions, Barkley has voiced his displeasure with the 76ers superstar, including quick and subtle jabs at Harden's unique wardrobe, as well as the way Harden handled himself when he wanted out of Houston, and stating that James was the reason that McHale got fired as head coach in 2015. In fact, Chuck even still makes jokes on Inside the NBA about how every time Harden does his celebration move, a coach gets fired, and has said multiple times how he just does not like James Harden's play, and that he would not be fun to play with. Recently, after Harden was traded from Brooklyn to Philly, the two teams faced off against one another, and at halftime, Barkley didn't hold back on the 76ers' new acquired guard.
James Harden.
What's scaring you about him?
Listen, he has a reputation for fading big games. He has done nothing tonight to make us forget that. But James has just been flat out awful.
And then even after the game in which Philly lost, Barkley continued to say,
he struggled in all big games. If you go back and look, even when they were in Houston, when they should have beat the Golden State Warriors, they were up.
We were there.
They were up until Chris Paul got hurt, and Chris was the leader of that team. James is a terrific player, but when the lights are the brightest, he has played awful. The thing about being a great player, you don't have to play great. You just can't stink up the joint, and he stunk up the joint tonight.
Since hate is such a strong word, let's just say that Charles doesn't really like James Harden or the way he plays ball. Paul Pierce. Another former NBA great and future Hall of Famer, Paul Pierce, has also spoken at length about James Harden. When interviewed on the Fubo Sports Network, Pierce noted how he believes that things will be better for Harden now that he's in Philly because he actually respects Doc Rivers, whereas when Harden was in Brooklyn, he was forced to play under Steve Nash, who he didn't respect. However, he also made the following statement towards Harden as well.
If I had a chance to play with the talent that Harden played with, I'd probably be walking out here with 5 championships. He didn't play with Chris Paul, Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Dwight Howard, Kyrie Irving. Now you playing with Jim. Like, you played against with all Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And that ain't worked yet.
After Pierce made these comments, the other former NBA All-Star in the room, Gilbert Arenas, pointed out how Harden lacks the court awareness and skill set to play off the ball. So he only knows how to prioritize ISO ball scoring. And unless the team or front office is set up to complement that, Harden will always fail and will always be unhappy. I think that Arenas makes a good point here, and the way that Harden plays is not conducive to winning a championship. It's a knock on Harden that's always been there, and now he's at the point in his career where you're not going to get him to change how he plays. He's too old, too accomplished, and too set in his ways to become more of an off-the-ball scorer or facilitator. So there's a very real chance that his best days are behind him, and he may never win a ring. So there you have it. That's what some of the most recognized NBA players in the world think about James Harden and why he is one of the most hated players in basketball. Before you leave, feel free to leave a comment below with your thoughts on today's video or what you'd like to see next time. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you never miss any of our upcoming videos.